This is Black Ram 313, chilling out. Want to share a few thoughts with my brothers out there. Today's topic I want to cover would be about prostitution. And then I would also like to share a few of my experiences that I had in Brazil, in the great city of Rio de Janeiro. Now, I was thinking about prostitution and prostitutes. Now, as a young man, I've always looked down on prostitutes and I always looked down on those who would pay women for sex in any form or fashion. I grew up on the west side of Chicago where pimping was very popular and famous. The west side of Chicago is known for a man named Don Magic Juan. And there was a whole culture or ghetto subculture of men who wanted to be like him and the other players and hustlers that we saw in the neighborhood. So we would learn the game of the manipulation of the minds of women. And I saw these men as being brilliant and men that I wanted to be like and I admired. Now there's different levels of the game. I haven't really heard anybody else express this, but at the first level you have a pimp. Now a pimp pimps whores. There's no two-way streets about it. You can't call yourself a pimp and you don't have a woman either on the street or working a square job paying you money. Other than that, you're no pimp. You are just a man dealing with a woman in whatever capacity. But again, a pimp is a man who has a woman working for him and giving him not some of the money, not a part of the money, but all the money. The second level of the game is what I would like to call a Mac. Now, sometimes people use these words and terms interchangeably, but a Mac is simply a man who gets women to take care of him by paying his bills or giving him cash. Something like a pimp, except the Mac doesn't have prostitutes on the street selling their bodies. The Mac more or less has any type of woman giving them money. And this is different from a gigolo. Well, a gigolo would basically get paid for sex. That's not what a Mac is. A Mac has relationships with these women. He has a rapport with these women. He has these women as a continuous source of income. More so a skill level than just a sexual thing, a verbal and mental skill level that takes a certain psychological sophistication to pierce the mind and heart of a woman to get her to do these things. And then a last level to serious game is a player. Now, again, all these terms are interchangeable, but what separates the player from the Mac and the pimp is that his aim is pretty much sex for the most part. Now, a player can have long-term relationships with women, multiple women, but for the most part, his only interest is the object of sex. He really gains nothing from them other than that. But what a player doesn't do, a player does not pay for sex. Neither does the Mac, neither does the pimp. For these men see themselves as the prize. They have themselves in high value. And these type of men in the community that I grew up in were well admired and respected. And then we have on another level what they would call the Johns or Johnny. Now the John is the one who strictly pays for sex. And although to the aforementioned type of men, the John is looked down upon, the worst is what we have is the simp. Now the simp is the one who doesn't outright pay for sex, but the simp is the one who marries the former prostitute, or why she is a prostitute. The simp is the one who takes everybody's leftovers. The simp is the one who would put his life on the line just for the company, the companionship, or even just the validation, a pat on the head of a slut or a whore. there are many people who watch this channel and comment who fit that description of the simp. Now, back to the John. I had a conversation with a guy, and we were talking about just various women that we find attractive. And I was telling him, hey, let's go and hit a few clubs up and see what's happening. And since you like this type and that type of woman, let's go hang out and see what you can come up with. And this gentleman told me, nah, that's too much time, too much energy. I ain't got time for all of that. I'd rather find somebody and pay for it. Now, when I heard that, the first thing that jumped in my mind was that this guy is a lame and a sucker. But then when I thought about it, this gentleman said that it's too much time and it's a waste to even try to go out there and court a woman to sleep with her. And I couldn't agree more with his statement and his ideal. Time and energy. You figure when you meet a woman at a club or anywhere, in a club, in a grocery store, bar, lounge, what have you, you have to have the courage and the confidence to approach her and then say something exciting and spectacular to say that I'm different from the rest of the guys. And then you have to go on and get her number. And then once you get her number, you have to be witty enough and sophisticated enough and interesting enough to gain her interest, to keep up the pursuit. After that, then you have to go on and be funny. You have to go on to possibly pay for a date or at least meet her at a coffee shop. It's a tedious process, a process that can take days or even months. Nonetheless, the payoff is all the same. You're either gonna have a good time sexually with her or not. No matter how hard you work for it or how much you pay. Now, thinking about this, that is such a big time and energy expenditure, I now see that the John may be more brilliant than the pimp, the Mac, and the player. Because the John has the money to spend, and I'm not one of those guys that ain't tricking if you got it. It's tricking. I heard a man say, I forgot what movie it was, that he said you don't pay a woman to have sex with you, you pay her to leave. And looking at that, how much of a waste it is to date a woman and how you would just rather want to do the act and get it out of the way, I can't look down on a man who pays for sex. I can't look down on any man who finds his time and his energy more valuable. And then if you look at it, if time is money, the man who spends an inordinate amount of time to pursue a woman is truly wasting money. Now we know that, from my experience especially, we know that in the black community, women are easy to sleep with. But there's always a catch to that. Now, if you're a decent man who is about something and a woman can tell that you're clean and you don't have this overemphasized masculinity that they call thuggism or swag, so to speak, that these women in the impoverished area or lesser developed areas or hood areas, they wouldn't want to sleep with a man that has, let's say, a Toyota Corolla and a college degree that goes and pays his bills. Nah, she'd rather have Pookie the drug dealer who can barely pull his pants up and couldn't form a sentence if it would save his life. So easy sex in the hood, yes, but for a specific type of guy. So what you have left is playing the game that the woman owns, which is called dating. And it just seems as if it is a smarter choice, a wiser choice, just to pay and get it over with. To use the services of a prostitute. Now, how is a prostitute different from any woman walking down the street? Because it's my opinion that they are all whores. Well, first of all, what is a whore? Now, I would like to use more older definitions and specifically biblical definitions, because biblical culture, Hebrew culture, of course, predates American culture and, of course, most European cultures as it stands. Okay. Now, when you go deep into the etymology of the word, whether it's prostitute, whore, harlot, and even an archaic word like strumpet, what you will find is that all these words, although they're synonymous, for the most part what we can gather is that a whore is a woman who sleeps with a man or multiple men, a woman who sleeps with multiple men for money and or pleasure. When you really go deep into the word, when you want to dig out the true meaning. So if that's the case, that a whore is a woman who sleeps with multiple men for pleasure and or money, then how is the average Western woman any different than a prostitute for hire? At what point does it matter if a woman has slept with 10 men, 20 or 30? And you figure your average woman above the age 30, or even lower, has slept with at least 30, 40, 50 guys, and upward to 100. But again, I like to try to be modest and say, hey, maybe, a woman that's, let's say, 30, 31, has had about 15, 20 guys. How is she not a prostitute? How can she not fit that definition? She is a whore. Now, whether she's getting paid directly or not, doesn't really matter, because the results are the same. She still has prostituted herself. The vagina has little to no value. Now, some may have a moral dilemma, saying, well, prostitution and sleeping with a prostitute is wrong. Well, again, how can a prostitute be any more wrong morally than sleeping with your average American woman who has gone from dick to dick to dick to dick? In fact, thinking of the whole thing, paying a prostitute is smarter, because you don't have to waste your time on courting and pursuing and trying to impress the modern whore. So truly, there shouldn't be any moral dilemma if you're going to sleep with any woman out here, because chances are she's not a virgin, and she is not a woman who has dedicated her life to the first man she slept with. In fact, this whole Western idea of sexual relations is a farce, a foolish concept. There is no such thing as a monogamous woman in America or the Western world, period, or even most of the world, because monogamy means a woman would mate with one man for the rest of her life. Now, again, I have to make this point and disclaimer: I am not an egalitarian. I do not believe, not for 1 second, that men and women are equal. I believe that a man can have thousands of women that he slept with, and he is morally superior to a woman who slept with just 2 men. I believe that men can have multiple wives, multiple girlfriends, or whatever you want to have it. I believe deeply in polygyny. So, given the fact that they are all whores, why not pay? Now, I'm not necessarily advocating prostitution for anyone, but just as a thought, an idea, well, what's the damn difference? There is none. Quite a few years ago, I think it was now 2015, I want to say, maybe back in 2005, 2004, somewhere around there, I took a trip to Brazil. And I remember the plane ticket was about $950. And I was like, damn, this is a lot of money for a vacation. I remember a time in my life when I couldn't afford $150 for anything, let alone $950. But anyway, I had got this new job that I currently have now, and it allowed me to do quite a few things that in times past, I didn't have the financial resources to do. So, 9-hour plane ride from here to Brazil. And I remember, as the plane was about to land, seeing the houses. Houses as far as the eyes can see. All small and white. Brick shacks. And many of them didn't even have a roof. And come to find out later on that people would pay for houses in stages because they didn't have the money for them. And the last thing that they would put on these houses would be a roof. So you have many houses from new construction to houses that were many years old that the purchaser couldn't complete the payments, and these houses wouldn't have a roof. In fact, in Brazil, I seen poverty like never before, like you couldn't imagine. I even happened to see homeless children between the ages of 4 and 8 years old, and a lot of times they would band together in little packs of 10 and 15 and try to rob older tourists with their little pocket knives. And these same little boys, you can see them late at night, literally laying in the grass. Now, poverty like that doesn't exist in America. You won't see a homeless child, and especially not a child in most parts that the youngest 4 years old that's involved in criminal activity. But anyway, I digress. Oh, well, another point I want to make about Brazil and Rio, I noticed that the people there were just happier in their impoverished state than many people in the Americas or in America are with their Range Rovers and their big houses. The energy was different. The smiles on their face conveyed a different type of inner happiness. And I think it's something to be said for somebody who is truly happy versus someone who is happy because of the materials that they possess. I think there is a real difference there. But anyway, Brazil is a place with beautiful weather and beautiful people. Upon arriving there, one of the first things I did was go to a beach, and it was the first time I've ever seen a topless beach. And the women that walked on this beachfront were some of the most beautiful women that I've ever seen. And they come in all shades, from the Latina looking women to the black women, even Asian and European looking women. And one thing I noticed, the whole time I was in Brazil, the first time I went for 7 days. And I think the last time I went, which was within the same 18-month period, I think I stayed, 5 and I think 7 days on one. The whole time I was there, I seen only one obese woman. Every woman I saw was, for the most part, in good shape, whether she was older or younger, and most of them were beautiful. In fact, everywhere you turn your head, you would see a beautiful woman. So much so that you would walk down the street and really wouldn't want to look at the women walking down the street going to the beach. If you looked at a woman too long, she would literally be after you. It's like the roles are reversed in Rio. on Copacabana Beach in Rio de Janeiro, walking down the street, women will follow you and even hound you a little bit. Now, of course, these women are for hire, but prostitution is much different there. It's legal. The prostitutes, for the most part, are probably the most well paid there, better paid than some public officials and teachers and police officers. And these prostitutes are well protected. If a person would happen to deal with a prostitute and the negotiation is made for a price and that patron wouldn't pay, he could be arrested. Prostitution is legal, and it is a crime to steal the services of a prostitute without paying with the agreed upon price. Another thing that was amazing about Brazil is that the police officers are mostly military, and they walk around with rifles, assault rifles. You would be hard pressed to catch one without an assault rifle over his shoulder. So these women on this beach, topless and outside of the beach, beautiful women, everywhere you look and everywhere you turn. It's almost like paradise, at least for a man, that you have a city, pretty much a nation full of beautiful women with different attitudes. They smile more. I didn't see the classic black woman mean mugged facial expressions that you see here in America. And then most of you I know can attest to this, that if you see a black woman walking down the street, she looks as if she's mad at the world. And for her, every day is the worst day of her life when you look at her and her face and her attitude and her whole demeanor. In fact, thinking about this now, I've only seen black women have this type of aura, persona, or facial expressions. No matter where you go, you will see the black woman, and she's just automatically angry. Well, I didn't see that in Rio. The black women there all had smiles. They were beautiful, and you can just feel the energy. And these are some of the most beautiful women I've ever seen. So there was a couple of experiences I had that would probably last me a lifetime. I went to this club. I heard that it's now closed down. This club was located in Rio de Janeiro on Copacabana Beach. The name of the club was called Help. And some of the guys who frequent the areas from the United States say it's called Help because you're going to need some help once you go in there. Now, upon entering this club was almost like a stadium. Huge dance floor. You couldn't touch the ceiling. The ceiling had to be at least 60 feet from the ground. Dim lights, and it was women everywhere, and not just women in general, but beautiful women. In this particular club, I say the women literally, although I didn't give a count, but pretty much literally outnumbered men 20 to 1. For every one man, there was probably about 20 women. And in this club, it was 2 floors, although it had the stadium type of architecture. It was a couple of floors. And the women were there dancing, not necessarily provocatively, but just like you would catch at a normal club, a club here in America. Beautiful women with the tight pants on, dancing to American music. At the time I went there, 50 Cent was the one who was really popular. And, although these women couldn't speak English, they spoke Portuguese. They were saying some of the lyrics in English of, different songs by different rappers and artists from America. The thing about this club is that all of the beautiful women there, if you decided to, you can go home with any one of them. For the right price, of course. You can go with 2 of them or even 3 of them. And of course, Black Ram did indulge. and had my fill of a few ladies. In fact, at that time, I was in a much different state, being in my 20s. So I would typically have a woman for breakfast and lunchtime and dinner time. To the point, the end of my trip, I was worn out, to say the least. No more use. But it was a pleasant experience, although money was involved, to feel somewhat what a woman feels here in America. To be the object of desire, to be wanted and to be sought after by many beautiful women, although it was for the money, and although it is an illusion, to in reality have a woman pursue you was a feeling like no other. And having this experience, I can kind of understand why women are so arrogant. In fact, not kind of, I do understand. It's basically the mangina's fault. So let's look at it like this. You take a woman, a nice looking woman, let's say average looks, not even beyond average. And she's been told all her life that she's a princess. She's been told all her life that she can do nothing wrong. She's been told all her life that men should pursue her, and men do pursue her. Not just one man, but multiple men. Then she goes on Facebook. Then she goes on Instagram. Then she goes on Twitter. Then she goes on all the social media sites and the dating sites. And she has hundreds of men pursuing her. Then she goes to the club. And then she goes and walks down the street. She drives in a car. And men are pursuing her. And no matter how many children she has and how many men she slept with, men will still pursue her and pay her bills and accept that she's a slut and accept her bastard children and worship her. How can a human being not be arrogant? But anyway, in Brazil, being sought after felt powerful. To get that type of attention from women is powerful. Now, there's a deception that takes place, again, as I stated, and I believe this is nationwide. We've known for some time that Asian women and in Asian communities in Asia happen to be some of the most submissive women and traditional women on the planet, and other nations as well. But from the comments that I've received from those who watch my video, and I happen to get comments from people all around the world actually, which surprises me, and from talking to different men and hearing other men's video, what I realize is that the red pill is a motherfucker. And what I mean by that is a lot of men can be deceived into thinking that a woman from another nation would have different values and would appreciate him more. But the truth is this: if you're an American man in any nation, any country on the planet, a woman is going to want you because you're an American man. And that says money. Hypergamy is universal. You can't get away with it. It's biologically hardwired into the minds and souls of women. Now, of course, there are cultural variations of this. Of course, there are variations from woman to the extreme of hypergamy, whether it's high or low. Nevertheless, hypergamy exists. And I think it's based on biological impulses, and still has a large part to do with the culture, somewhat of a nature versus nurture, or nature and nurture. And I think there's not a balance of both, but I think it's biological in part. So you can't outrun hypergamy. You can't go to another culture and say, hey, this woman here is different from the American Western female. They're pretty much are all the same. They are all whores. They all want men for their resources. And the only differences that may exist is the very few women who gather their own resources, but yet and still, what female doesn't want more? Another experience I had in Brazil, probably one of the best ones. They have what you call bath houses, but in Brazil they call them thermoses or termoses. Now in Brazil there are several of them. Well, no, I'm sorry, not even several. I want to say anywhere between, in Rio Copacabana Beach, in that area, there's probably about between 30 to 70 different bathhouses, ranging ranging in price from uh, 10, 20 American dollars to 100 American dollars, ranging from a very exquisite looking place to what would look like an alley. Now, for those who don't know what a bathhouse or a thermos is, many of you probably seen the Rush Hour movies when Chris Tucker and Jackie Chan went into this area and they had these robes on, and women were brought out and they were able to pick and choose. So one night I decided to try one of these bathhouses out. I think the name of the bathhouse was called Luomo. And entering the place is kind of scary because you're in a foreign nation. Didn't know a lick of Portuguese, just maybe a few words. And upon entrance to this bathhouse, very dark, the first person you see is the clerk or the cashier. And you pay an entrance fee. And after you have this entrance fee, they give you a ribbon to go around your arm. And then someone escorts you to a room where you have to take all your clothes off and put it in a locker. You have to. There's no choice. And all you are told and allowed to have on is maybe underwear, but mostly no clothes, house shoes that they give you, and a robe. And then they escort you into another room where, and this room ranges in size depending on your location, but this particular room that I was in was fairly large. I couldn't give an estimate on the square footage. But there were these large couches and stripper poles, although these women weren't necessarily stripping, and a huge bar. And the entrance fee pays for, I believe, a drink at the bar. They had a buffet in the back, and it paid for the food, and it paid for the girl. Now, so I'm in this room, the music is going, and it was about 7 or 8 men in this room, possibly. I went kind of fairly early in the late evening and the night hours, probably around 10, 11 o'clock. And men from all over the world. On this trip and journey, I've met other black men from other states in various fields, Japanese businessmen from Japan, and there was a lot of men from the UK there. In fact, it almost seemed like they were the majority. Well, anyway, so I'm sitting on this white couch, and I had a drink in my hand. I believe I had a cigar. And the women would be dancing, and then some of them would come down, and from the dance, it was like a little small stage, and they would come and sit on your lap and talk to you, and in Portuguese, of course, and kind of rub on your shoulders a little bit. And I mean, beautiful women. I mean, these are some of the most beautiful women I've ever seen. Latinas, black women, just beautiful women. And it was one woman that caught my eye and my attention. Beautiful black woman. Brazilian black woman. Body like a goddess, so to speak. And she couldn't have been any more than 19 or 20 or 21. Very young girl, but very beautiful girl. And I couldn't get over how slim and beautiful this woman was. So she's the one that I chose to take into this room. So this is my first time there. And so she actually grabs me by the hand once I told her I wanted her, and takes me into this back of the so-called club, the thermos, the bathhouse. It was a nice sized room. And, needless to say, I had a very good time. But what stuck with me the most is after me and this beautiful woman experienced what we experienced together. I went and sat in the sauna for a while. She was away from me at the time. And I proceeded to take a shower and get back into a clean robe and went to the buffet area. And I didn't want to eat anything, but I just simply sat back on this lounge chair. And this woman who I was finished with came into the area that I was in and just simply sat on the chair with me. It was a lounge chair. And reclined with me and just laid on my chest comfortably. Now, I'm kind of a romantic guy. I understand the nature of women. But I thought that that was so sweet and beautiful that this woman laid in my bosom. And yeah, the endorphins and the serotonin and dopamine went off in my brain. And I felt at that time a happy man. Now, I know she's a prostitute. I understand that. I'm in no delusion. But to see this black woman come, and she didn't want anything. She didn't want any more money. I was done. But she simply wanted to chill with me. And I thought that was a very, very good experience that I had in Brazil. And it was the whole attitude like that. Now, although these women are for hire, the attitude of these women, they were sweet, they were humble, they were submissive, they were beautiful. And I had never experienced anything like that in the world. And the third experience, other than the thermos and the club called Help, I met a woman who actually spoke English. She looked Greek. She spoke Portuguese, of course. She didn't look like a Latin woman. She looked actually Greek. But of course, I see that in Rio or in Brazil, period. You have all shades of women and all, backgrounds of women. And this woman I met just walking down the street. So the first day I met her, we hung out a little because she spoke English. And we went back to my place and we had a good time. And of course, I paid her at the end of the ordeal. I saw her the next day, the following day, and I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't even looking to deal with her. And her and I just got to having a conversation again. And I said, hey, you want to just, come back to my place and just hang out? We don't have no money for nothing, but we can just hang out. And she's like, sure. And she came back to my place and we just sat around and talked and had a drink and, had a bite to eat. And it was just so refreshing just to see a woman that I can just enjoy her company without the attitude, without the mess. And no money was exchanged in that particular ordeal. I remember going outside of the main area, Copacabana Beach, and the main tourist area took a train into a mall area. And just walking around the mall and walking around the town amongst the townspeople, the regulars, the locals, I got a lot of looks and stares. They can smell and look at you and tell that you're an American. And I got a lot of looks from the women and a lot of smiles too. And I even tried to engage in conversation with a few of them. But of course, the language barrier was the problem. I even met a few women there who spoke a little English that I tried to keep up with through email. But of course that didn't work, the language barrier, the distance. But these women, even those who weren't into the prostitution, those women who may have looked at me and I may have felt that there was an attraction or somewhat, was still a delusion because they're looking at you as an American man with money that can save them from their poverty. Now, the point of this story and the point of this video is the realization that all women are whores, they are hypergamous, they are promiscuous. In this day and age, there is no such thing as monogamy anymore. And just like you have to be careful with a prostitute, you have to be just as careful, if not more so, with the average woman walking down the street. And there is no escape from the clutches of female hypergamy. There is no solution. You can't culture your way out of it. You can't go to a white woman if you're a black man. You can't go to an Asian woman and get your way out of this. You can't go to South American countries. Now, yes, the hypergamy varies in degrees, but you cannot escape it. Women do not love men. Women love themselves. Women love what a man can provide for them for the most part. And in the rare event now, that you can find a woman to love you, the rare occasion, it's still a dangerous situation, because she can love you today, bub, and hate you the next. She can be madly in love with you today and walk away from you tomorrow. You can be her everything one day and her enemy the next. There is no escaping. What is a man to do but go his own way? There is nothing that we can obtain from a woman of value other than her sexual organ. And for the men who think they have something in a woman, think again, because in reality you have absolutely nothing. And as I've said before, if a woman claims to love you, the only way you can even know that it's remotely possible, is that if she can accept all that you are, put up with all your shit, and worship you like the king that you are. Other than that, you have nothing. And finding a woman like that is as rare as a unicorn. And if you find one, it just may be temporary. So that's my story. I want to give a shout out to a YouTuber that I discovered. Well, I didn't discover, I just ran across his channel. Makes great videos. His name is JD Black. I'll try to leave a link in the description box. Another YouTuber who I admire and respect. I was turned on to his channel recently. This man is wise beyond words. His name is Black Gnostic Speaks. Check him out. JD Black and Black Gnostic Speaks. And since I'm giving a shout out, I want to shout out to some YouTubers that I admire and respect. And if it wasn't for these guys, I wouldn't be making videos. And that's Assiduous Aristocat, Vince Rashad, Adagoon Forrest, and also some guys that once I started making videos that I admire and respect. Truth Quad, I Am Baal, my man Tito the Fresh, and Kalecat 34. If you like my channel, you'll like these guys much better. And that's it. It's Black Ram. I'm out.